Hello, everyone, and welcome to the WLG Mastermind of Professionals in the Death Care Industry. Today, we have a wonderful guest that is going to be wrapping up this series for us in our post death administration side of the mastermind, and it's regarding financial advisors' role in the post death administration process. So, without further ado, I'd love to introduce Mary Cousineau from our WLG group, and she is going to be with us today, sharing the ins and the outs of what is the role that financial advisors play. People a lot of times just think of a financial advisor on the pre-planning side of getting your investments and all of those pre-planning components. But when you do actually pass away, how does this actually play out? So, Mary, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Yes, please share with our audience a little bit about yourself, how you got into being a financial advisor, and where you're currently operating with currently.
Yeah, so I've been in this industry probably for about 20 years now, maybe a little more. I started off actually on the health insurance side, and when did a lot of work with group health benefits, and then quickly realized I preferred working with numbers and went and got some of my series license so I could become a financial advisor. Um, and the big part of that was I like helping people plan for their future, and then of course also the after.
Mhm.
um, so yeah, so I'm currently at HFG Wealth Advisors. I have been here for 20 years, and we are an independent wealth advisor firm helping individuals and businesses grow their retirement to make sure they don't spend it all in their golden years.
Yes. And I love your style and how you work with families, and you really see it as the whole family, not just the individual that is investing with you. And I think that that's such a critical component for me. I've spoken with a lot of financial advisors, and you guys have a very intimate feel to you, very customized. So it's not like you're, necessarily some of the bigger names that we hear about, like Raymond James, or some of the big boxes. It really feels like you're just like a personal advisor to the family. So
Right. And that's how we kind of run it. So we might start off working with the grandparents, and then, they enjoy working with us, and we want to make it a whole family affair because at the end, it's all about the holistic planning. And so then we start working with their adult children who are then getting closer to retirement and need help. And then we also provide advice to their children,
mhm.
so maybe they're only in their 20s. So they don't have a lot of investable assets outside like their 401k planning, but they still need that guidance and,
Mhm.
somebody that they can trust and go to. Um,
I think that makes all the difference, because it truly is a family affair, right?
it is.
You're
It is.
investing, you're growing your wealth, and then, as we all know, just like this episode right now, we're going to talk about when you pass away, where is that going? Well, it's going to your grandchildren, the children.
Right.
So by you guys already having that relationship, that has to make the post-death administration, as best as it could possibly be, I would think.
Absolutely. So, we've had it worked both ways, where we have had that relationship. And so we help them through the transfer process, but we've already, engaged with them beforehand about what that would entail. Somebody who, maybe we don't work with their children who are their beneficiaries, they don't understand how it goes. And we have to, handhold a little bit more, but that's what we're in the business for. We have to remind ourselves that this is a difficult time in everybody's life. And our job as the financial advisor is to pick up the pieces and make it run smoothly for them because they don't understand the process and they're also grieving at the same time.
Yes, yes. So let's jump right into it. When somebody does pass away, what is typically like, where do you come into the picture? Where is typically that first point of contact, or
Right. So typically, we have a client us. And the main thing is if they have a retirement account or a non-qualified, which would be like a trust account or an individual account or a joint account, TOD, which stands for transfer on death. We like to have listed beneficiaries. And when we get that from our client, we ask for phone numbers. So that way the beneficiary, if they reach out to us, or if we find out about the death, we can reach out to them.
Mm,
So we usually we are, when we already have the relationship, the beneficiary will reach out to us and report the death. And then we kind of go over the process and how it's going to work. And
okay.
typically, in our office, we have a workflow, which is death of a client. We've
Mm,
learned over the years, there's many different things that have to get completed. And if we can just follow through these steps, and it helps the client and us to move forward.
okay.
So the first thing is they report the death, and we tell them, go through the funeral process, get the death certificate. And for Florida, we usually need the long form in order to submit that with our death claims. And once they have that death certificate, we will schedule a meeting. Now, in the meantime, what we're doing in our office is gathering paperwork for maybe their life insurance, and then their account forms. So we know who the listed beneficiaries are. If it's 3 daughters, say, and the one daughter called us to confirm, we'll reach out to the other two to go over the process with them. And then we have a way where we can send forms out in the mail, electronically. Some of the forms require a wet signature, so we'd have to send those out, or we have them come in and we meet with them. So
Do
go
you
ahead.
find that, do you find that all financial advisors set up a transfer upon death process?
Um, I'm not quite sure. It just depends on how much they're involved in the planning process. I think the pre-planning. So a big one for ours is, of course, we're hoping to already have that relationship with the beneficiary. So then when we transfer, that account will stay with us. But even if it doesn't, we still help all steps of the way. And we also go outside the box rather than just helping with the transfer of the accounts that are held with our office. Let's say they had an account at a bank account at a bank, and the beneficiary is like, I need help with these forms. Bring the forms to us. We'll fill them out for you. We'll help you. We've even gone a couple of steps above and beyond of going to the bank with them because they just lost a loved one. you
Mhm,
know their thought process is not all there. We know the questions to ask. We know the answers we're looking for to get, and every place is different. We found along the way, I love my local credit union, but sometimes they're a little bit more difficult with the transfer process.
mhm.
um,
Right. And it's being, seeing that side of it, it really helps you to set people up for success from the beginning. Um,
correct.
because there's all types of financial options you can do, like even investing on like Cash App and, all these different things. And if you don't have, in the event, it's inevitable, right? We're all going to pass away. Nobody's in thinking about it, right? That's actually going to happen to them. We had an executor recently, they just moved to Florida and never was expecting, obviously, to pass away in a sudden tragic car accident, but it happened, and if you don't have, the transfer on death, set up, you don't have the beneficiaries properly assigned, that can cause a huge problem for people, right?
That's correct. So our goal when we're meeting with the clients in pre-planning is to go over all those, with their accounts here, they should all have listed beneficiaries. If not, they can have it where they have a trust account set up and maybe the beneficiary is the trust. A lot of times people will forget about the home, which you're aware of. And
Mhm,
so our goal is to make sure we give them options to try to keep everything out of probate as much as possible.
mhm,
Because when you're dealing with the death of a loved one, you don't want the process to drag out.
mhm,
And so our job is to make sure, and then we touch on that every couple of years because people change their minds on who they want to list as their beneficiaries. A
mhm,
lot of times too, people will say, oh, I have that in my will. Okay, but if you have a listed beneficiary in your IRA account with us, that comes first before your wishes in your will. And people
Hmm.
are like, really? And so, we're able to list beneficiaries on your investment accounts. And then maybe you don't need a trust, you just need a will.
Hmm. Right, right. Just the more things that you can set up to transfer upon death is the best route, you know?
Right. Hmm.
A lot of people have the misconception. They think if I have a will, I don't have to go to probate. And
Correct. And that is not true. Yeah.
it's not true.
Yeah. So we had a client of ours recently where he's a client of ours and his aunt had passed away and they thought they had everything tidied up, but the house was not titled. So it has to go through probate, and so it's just little things like that where it's like you just need to make sure that things are in a line.
You know what's the funniest part about the real estate and
But
that whole process? Is that by the statute, it says that the homesteaded property of the decedent is not a part of probate and it passes outside of probate. Okay. However, in order to do that, you have to go through probate, submit it as a homestead order, wait a 90-day creditor period so that it can pass outside. So it's the most quasi moron.
right. And see, most people don't know that,
They
right?
don't know that, and
Yeah.
they think, and for real estate, it's a lot different than in a stock account, because you list the beneficiaries and immediately it goes directly to them, whereas in real estate, there's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of decisions that have to be made, there's a lot of things that have to go on, so the more things that you can set up just to transfer right over. North Carolina actually has a transfer upon death for their real estate. So you can set it up where when you die, it goes right over. Or people could set up an enhanced life estate here in Florida where if they know those beneficiaries, they want it to go, you could set it up that way based on how you deed it. But yeah, a lot of people don't think about, they think about the planning side, right? But they don't think about, okay, how is this actually going to go down in real life?
Right.
I have a question. So, what is the difference of having the trust as a beneficiary versus just giving it directly to a person?
So a lot of times people will put it in a trust if they want to have control from the grave, is like I like to say. Let's say you have kids who are in their 20s, maybe one of them isn't as mature as the others. You don't want them to get millions all at once so that they spend it. So a trust, you can delegate how that pays
Mm-hmm.
out. Whereas let's say, you're older, you pass away, your kids are in their 50s, they're financially stable, you just want it to pay out to them. And so you can just list a beneficiary.
Yeah. Is that something that you see when people start working with you that they already have a trust set up, or is that something that you're when you're consulting with the family and kind of seeing what they have that you're recommending them to set up?
Yeah, it's weird. It's kind of like half and half. I feel like some people either start with estate planning, getting their wills or trusts established, or they start with financial planning first. And so, but it's important for financial advisors, estate attorneys, to work hand in hand to make sure that the client's taken care of.
Is there a right or wrong in your opinion on which one you should do first?
I don't think there's a right or wrong. I do think that when people become adults, and they start to plan their life, sometimes the first thing that might happen is they buy a home or they have a child. And in that case, that's when life insurance kicks into play or should.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something as financial advisors we always look for too. If they come to us and they're in their 30s or 40s and they have a family, okay, what have they done and what's missing in the gaps?
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's really important for us to have great referrals with estate attorneys and also CPAs.
Right. Yeah, that's what I want to lead into is, when you're talking about, like you said, controlling from the grave, I'm sure that there's different implications as far as getting paid out directly to the beneficiary, as far as taxes and capital gains. And, Florida, we don't have an inheritance tax, so that's amazing. But if you get a large distribution of money, that is still going to be recorded as your personal income, right, for that year. How does
Yeah, yeah, it depends. So there's many different payouts. So let's start with retirement accounts, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if somebody has an IRA and if it's spousal beneficiary, say the husband passes away and the wife is the beneficiary, she can then roll his IRA into her IRA and will continue. Now, if it's non-spousal, let's say that dad passed, it's the mom gives it to her daughter. Well, now they require that there's a 10-year payout. So we have to establish a new account for the beneficiary. And that's the thing. Most people think, oh, I'm a listed beneficiary, just pay me out the money. That's
Mm-hmm.
not the case. We have to set up an account in the beneficiary's name, entitle
Mm-hmm.
it correctly, transfer it from the deceased account, and then we can pay it out however the beneficiary prefers. So with retirement accounts, now there's a 10-year rule where it's like a 10-year drawdown where you're required to draw that money down to zero by the 10th year.
Mm. Even
Whereas
if you
before it used to be where you could, um, just take your a certain amount every year rather than have to draw it down. So for
don't.
example, we have a client where her mom passed away, left her a large IRA account. So it's called an IRA BDA, beneficiary designated account. And then you can't commingle that with other retirement accounts because of all the rules associated with that. So
Oh.
she's got the 10-year rule, right? Her mom was over 73, so she was already taking her required minimum distribution out of her IRA. So now the daughter has to take a minimum amount each year, and then by the 10th year has to have it drawn down to zero. Well, knowing that we already work with the daughter and that we know that she's going to retire in year 7, we can take the minimum amounts because she's still working and having an income. And then from year 7 to 10, we can send her larger amounts in there because she's retired to get it down to zero. So there's a lot of planning that's involved with retirement accounts for non-spousals
Mm-hmm.
beneficiaries.
Right. And are those sometimes the majority? Just, just the nature of, one spouse passes away, it rolls to them, and then that spouse passes away, and then it's going to roll to.
Yes. Yeah, we've seen that happen a lot. I mean, spousal beneficiaries, of course, is the easiest, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Because then you don't have to take
Right.
distributions
On the
out.
same. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. Same with the houses, a husband or
right.
wife, it just absorbs into now their name. There's no
Yeah,
real, yeah. So that's very interesting, and that, that requires a lot of strategy. I mean, even with, like you mentioned, starting off on this is somebody that's grieving. This is a family that is processing a lot of thoughts, and now they've got to have like these pretty serious, strategy sessions, right? To
right.
evaluate how to handle this.
And then sometimes some beneficiary will be like, you know what? It's my money. I want to take it all. And so we go over the different strategies with them before they take it all. I
Mm.
ask them if they have another financial advisor that they're working with. And if they do, they can set up the IRA BDA with us and then do a transfer. And because I explained to them, if you take it all at once, it's all taxable income towards you. And that could bump you up in a tax bracket. And nobody wants to pay more taxes than they have to. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Hmm.
Um,
What is, on somebody, let's say that's inheriting, $1 million portfolio for number's sakes. I mean, if they were to just say, hey, I want to just completely cash this out, I don't want to roll it into anything. I mean, it depends kind of question, but what would that look like as far as, how much they would end up paying in taxes?
right. So depends on if they're working or what their current income is. You know what I mean? And that's where we would like to work with the CPA. Also, if they want to take it all out, we strongly suggest have the taxes withheld when you take it out, so that will help you when you file your tax returns the next year.
Right. So, is there kind of a ballpark percentage that you could kind of give an idea of what would it look like for someone to just cash out versus doing it a distribution over a long period of time?
Right. So if they cash out and it's like $1 million, they're going to be in the top tax bracket. You know what I
Right.
mean? And pay all those at once,
So is it
which,
like 30%, 40%,
yeah, it's like, oh, 37%, I think. So,
37%?
and the tax brackets change, right? With the different tax laws. Um, and so it's really important for them to understand the differences.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we'll go over them before we'll allow them to take the distribution, because I've got to make sure as a financial advisor that I've given them all the available options to them.
Right. So now can each, if it's four beneficiaries, can everybody make their own decisions on what they want to do with their portion?
They can. And that ties back into why they each have to set up their own individual account to get their portion transferred over. Um, and then once they have it there, if one of them decides, "Oh, I want to take the lump sum," we can send it out. If another one says, "You know what, I don't need the money right now, let's just, let it roll."
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Do you ever find like when you file the death claim paperwork or anything that is there any circumstances that somebody like wouldn't qualify or that they would get denied? Is that even a thing?
Like if they're a listed beneficiary.
Yeah. Is
Yeah,
there
I have not. I have not. So a lot, like I said, we deal with life insurance claims, annuity claims, investment account claims. Um, and I have not ran into that before. I have heard, it's not a client of ours, but where maybe it's the trust list beneficiaries and someone's left out and they might attest it. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and because, you know, people get squirrely when a death happens and money's involved.
Very squirrely.
Yeah. And so, sometimes someone who might have been left out have their feelings hurt, and so that can hold it up a little bit. So
So they would contest the state and then that would that put a hold on distribution?
yes.
Okay. Right. So there would have to be court legal documents filed, and then they
Right.
would place it over the financial accounts. It would have to be. So there has to be something in that death claim that is submitted, right? That is stipulating that there's nobody contesting or.
There really isn't. And so like if we submit a death claim and it goes to the trust, right? And so how that works is we set up the new trust account, and usually the estate attorney has to set up a new EIN number. And then the assets will get moved to that new trust account. And then per the trust payout, the successor trustee would then follow those rules and pay it out. But if
Right.
it's held up, then we'd have to wait. So
Right, right. We actually spoke with last week, Peachy from Peachy Insurance, and we were going through the death claim paperwork for the life insurance.
yes.
And she was saying that she has seen it in cases where, life insurance has gotten denied based off of, not factual information. Like if they say, based on what they're putting on that life insurance application, that initial intake, I thought that was so interesting because she was like, some people, like to fib on that, and
Yeah.
I'll say
Not time to
exactly
fib.
how it is, and then, when you go to get, put a claim on the insurance and then they say, oh, we're going to deny this.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking. Because
That's,
a lot of people are relying on that life
mm,
insurance money.
yeah, we were talking about that. A lot of people will use that for the funerals. Funeral homes will allow you to plan a service and with the you getting the payment from the life insurance.
Yep.
So a lot of people.
Well, and that's why I've seen a lot of times too, sometimes the funeral homes will help with that paperwork as well.
Mm-hmm.
Not all, it just depends on who you work with.
Yeah, that's really neat that you help the families with those processes of the bank the life insurance, the annuities, even though that's not particularly your wheelhouse, but it's so overwhelming, to think about all the things that an executor has to do after somebody passes away.
Yeah.
They're all individual. You got to deal with the bank. You got to deal with the financial advisor. You got to deal with the life insurance. You got to deal with the funeral home. These are all independent companies, independent agreements, arrangements. And then you've got all your beneficiaries.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
it's
and that's why it's key again for me to have relationships with the state attorneys, with CPAs, even with some local banks around here, you know what I mean? So I can make a phone call and help the client out. I mean, that's what we want to do is we want to help make this process as smoothly for them, help them with the paperwork, and um, and then it's not over. I mean, you think, okay, yeah, it's transferred over, but now it's okay. Well, if it's a spouse, okay, well, does she have enough income to live on? Does she need more? Because sometimes, there might have been a pension involved that now has gone away. So there's a lot going on. And the more information we have up front, the more we can quickly help with all the adjustments needed on the end.
So let me ask you this, Mary. If somebody, of course, people pass away and there's no sign, there's no notice, that's it, you're gone. Beam me up, Scotty, right?
Right.
But then there is times where families are ill or they are aging. What are the proactive steps that a family can make to make this process smoother?
Right. So this has happened. We've had a lot of clients like who might have cancer, right? And they know the prognosis is not good. So um again, we'll get with them. Okay, this is what we have listed. Is this still all correct in what you want? You know what I mean? So that way they know, okay, my planning is set. I can just, live the remaining amounts of my life how I need to.
In peace, yeah.
Mhm.
Do you find that when families maybe set up the financial plan and then they don't come back to it, as far as like distributions and how things are gone, that it does create a little chaos on for the family once they're gone, if they're not coming in and being proactive about their beneficiaries, the transfer upon death? I'm sure in the 20 years you've had to see some surprises after people pass away.
Yeah. That's why it's our job to make sure, like, I go over every year when I meet with a client, their beneficiaries. Um,
Mm.
because sometimes they might have listed a sister. Well, then in that year, their sister might have passed. Well, they didn't notify us of that. You know what I mean? Because it didn't directly affect them with their accounts with us. But that's why
Mhm.
it's important to get all that updated.
Right. So if that sister was deceased, right,
Right.
then would in essence that have to go to probate?
No,
Or
it wouldn't. We just have to provide, I believe, the death certificate. You know what I mean? But then again, so then the other beneficiaries are held with that. So then it would just go to the other two beneficiaries if there were three on there.
oh, okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah,
Like if a beneficiary was deceased, you could provide the death certificate that that person's, and then it would
right,
just flow into the other beneficiaries.
correct. And here's the other thing we always tell people: gather more death certificates than you think you need, because there's nothing worse than having to go back and request more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, pretty much in that administration process, everyone needs a death certificate, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
um,
And
mortgage companies, everything, banks.
right. And 9 times out of 10, if I can just provide a copy, I will then, after everything is all said and done, give the originals back to the client so they
Mhm,
can hold on to them.
mhm.
And I always tell them, hold on to them because a couple years can go by, something else could pop up.
Right, right.
Mhm.
I'm really, I would love to think that every financial advisor is like you, and people just have these good experiences. They have someone that's keeping in touch with the family, is seasoning the next generation with kind of the information. And you've spoken with, you're in the middle of these conversations with families. Do you find that they're open to sharing the distribution information with their kids in advance, or is it still kind of that old school, like, the will in the top drawer, nobody knows until.
Right. So as we're passing through the generations, I do feel um that maybe people more in like their 60s are more apt to share. And let's say, it was a husband and wife, the husband passed, now the wife is left. She will maybe lean on her children a little bit more, and she does bring them into the conversation. And I think that's really important so they know, okay, I'm here to help them when something happens to their mom, but or if they have any questions. Um, but yeah, I think the tide's kind of changing there a little bit with the generations, and it's good.
Mhm.
Like, talk about money. You know what I mean? It's important. You don't have to share how much money you have, but you talk about money, and this is how things are going to go when something happens to me.
Mhm.
Um, we also provide to our clients kind of like a little legacy booklet, a memorial guide, we call it, for them to write things inside of it. So their family at their passing kind of look at it, and it just kind of gives a little bit more details of things that, it might not have been in the will, or like, here's where all my documents are located. So, and that's another reason we always request from the estate attorneys a copy of the trust, wills, healthcare surrogate, power of attorneys, um,
Mhm.
so that we can also, bring that back up when we're having the beneficiary discussion with them to make sure that their needs are the same as they were 5, 10 years ago.
That's excellent. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's really great. I feel like that's an antiquated system in itself, just you can go and get a trust done. We talked about that with John Miller, and he's like, people get a trust, but then they don't fund the trust, you
Yep.
know, and then, there's always that, missing will that nobody can find,
Yeah.
And it seems like, why is this? It reminds me of, remember when Elon Musk was getting into the White House and he was doing all that, and they unveiled that there was like, for like the retirement process, it was done like in like an underground facility with like
Yes.
no internet. It's
Like,
like,
yeah, what year are we in? I know.
can we get up with the time, and think about also digital assets,
Right.
that has to play a role with you guys too, right? As far as Bitcoin and these digital
Right.
assets.
So we are not allowed to buy Bitcoin or give any advice because it's just not highly regulated.
Right.
And so, a lot of times our clients will have an outside account where they might carry that. And it's important for them to make sure that that has a listed beneficiary, you know what I mean? And that it's also listed with their other account. So when something happens to them, there's a payout structure available.
And the passwords are very important on those.
Yes. Yes.
Like literally, if you don't have the password, you're
You
done.
can't get into it. Yeah. Yeah. It's scary.
It's scary, and just to think of how much money are in those accounts, how many people are investing in those, and if you don't have some type of vault system, or somewhere, what are all your passwords and all the
Right.
websites, in this digital age, I mean, more and more things are all online, virtual, so I like the fact that when you work with the a state attorney, you get a copy of it as well,
Mhm.
and hey, if you needed to be able to provide that to an executor or somebody, you have the beneficiaries, you have it there.
Right. Exactly.
As I
Exactly.
don't understand why that stuff's not recorded. Like if you set up a trust, just like, you set up a will, why don't we record that stuff so that it's there forever whenever it's needed?
Yeah. I'm not sure.
Like, who came up with this?
Yeah. Well, and like you said about the passwords, a lot of times, so we have these vaults, password vaults on our computers, you know what I mean? But you got to have a password to get into that. And so that would be good for information to write in the memorial guide for your beneficiaries to have, you know what I mean? And make sure you update it when you have to change your password.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that brings up a whole topic because so like you guys, the Bitcoin and EFTs and all that is not regulated, so financial advisors don't touch it really. Is there anybody that manages that, or is that everybody's doing it on their own?
Some financial advisors might. It's just through our broker dealer, we're not allowed to,
Hmm.
um, because it's not regulated enough. Every financial advisor is different. We're all accredited differently. We all handle things differently. Like you said, you like how I work with the families and I touch on all these things. That's because we look at ourselves as holistic planning, where some financial advisors just might be doing investment accounts. You know what I mean? So there's many different avenues for a client to take on what they're looking for.
Hmm. So let's take a spin real quick. So let's say that you have your financial accounts and you're dealing with like Chase. Your investment, your IRAs, everything is like with a big bank, like Bank of America, Chase,
Right,
Basically, when you would have to do this process, you're basically calling a 1-800 number, right?
right,
In most
right.
cases. What
Yes.
would someone like yourself be able to work with the beneficiary in doing that process and then being able to like transfer that investment over to your firm and
Yeah.
then you assist with that whole process?
Yeah. And that's why I said credit unions are difficult to work with because we've gone through that process. And so, absolutely, we get the client come into the office, the beneficiary. We have all the documentation. We call the 800 number. They say, yes, you can talk to the financial advisor, me. And then I ask the questions because I know what to ask. You know what I mean? And if they give me an answer that I don't like, I re ask the question another way. Um, and then, we ask them for the paperwork and then we help the beneficiary fill out that paperwork. So,
Right.
and usually if you're working with a bank, like it's really good to have a relationship with your local banker. It really is because, if your mom passed away and she went to Bank of America and she went into a branch, go to that branch, see those people. You know what I mean? Because they're more likely to help you than the 1-800 number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that would be interesting for someone that knows that, they have these stock accounts with these, bigger box, not like a personal advisor. um, and then actually reaching out to an advisor like yourself, getting of like a consultation as far as like, how can I move these assets? What are my options with it? Because I think that a lot of people, of course, you take a totally different approach, but I think there's a lot of people out there that don't talk about their assets with their
Mhm.
family. So that's number one. It's completely, off. We're not talking about it. And then number two is that then the person passes away and now they're having to collect, going through the file cabinet and saying, oh, it looks like this account. And, kind of like having to piece it all together like a puzzle.
Right.
Um,
Well, one thing we've learned, people always hear, oh, diversify your investments, right? Diversify. Well, that doesn't mean have an account at a bank, have an account at a credit union, have an account with financial advisor A, have an account with financial advisor B. Diversified means that investments inside your portfolio are different to provide you with a return. And so we kind of go over that with clients as well, because if someone's nearing death and they know this, and they're a client of ours and they do have accounts elsewhere, we will help them to kind of consolidate to make it easier for their beneficiaries at their passing.
mhm.
9 times out of 10, people just haven't done it because it's not fun. It's difficult, it's a paperwork and you have to follow up on it to make sure it's getting processed. And so um, we're good at that. It's what we do. We help the client with that. And then the beneficiaries greatly appreciate it.
Mhm. Right. So you would be open to having people reach out to you, even if they don't have a current relationship with you, but they know that they're going to be inheriting these retirement accounts or, and maybe just need, to understand what their options are. Because I don't know that every single financial advisor out there, or even the big box brands, if they're having these conversations, or if they're just saying, these are your options, we'll just transfer it over into your name and then you could do whatever you want with it.
Right. Yes. Some people have minimums that they won't even talk to somebody unless they have a certain amount of investable assets. It
Hmm.
just depends. I kind of got in this business because, I enjoy helping people. And one thing that really hit home for me was when my stepdad passed away. Um, he was only 55 and he took care of all the finances for my mom. She was lost, you know what I mean? And so I was there to help her every step of the way. And you know, she was my mom, but there's not enough people out there to help people. And this happens a lot, especially in these older generations where the men handled all the finances and then they pass and the wives are left with, okay, what do I do? You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, I really, I feel that you've got to help these people maneuver um, because they don't have the answers and they don't have the right questions to ask.
Right. Right. Yeah. And especially you're grieving, you got so much in your head, you got so many moving parts, and probably some people initially just say, transfer it over into my name, and then, you know,
Right.
not really having any like strategy behind the tax implications and all the things.
Yeah, absolutely. And so while we're talking about tax implications, sometimes some people, I want to bring this up, if they have like a joint or a transfer on death account,
Mhm.
which is a non-qualified, they might have a stock position in that. Let's say they bought Apple a long time ago. Well,
Mm.
now the taxable gain on it is huge, right? And they might say, well, I want to, gift some of this stock to my kids. I might advise them against that because at your passing and when they're your beneficiary and it transfers over to them, it gets what's called a step up in basis. That
Mm.
means that um, mom died April 1st, and then the account transfers over to the daughter April 15th. Well, that Apple stock now will have the cost basis on April 1st, not from when it was initially bought. And so then when they decide to sell it, it's not a huge taxable gain to them. And that
Mm.
is huge.
Huge.
Hmm.
Right. So they would, dad bought it in 1990 and then he passes away in 2025. They're going to get that step up in basis as of the value you owning it in 2025, not from 1990.
Correct.
Right.
Huge tax saver.
Yeah. That also applies in real estate.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's they have to get a date of death appraisal of what the value of the house
Yep.
when they passed. And then if you were whenever you were to sell it, it would be based off of that value would be your capital gains or whatnot from there.
Yep. And so that's part of the process that we do when we transfer the account. So we set up the new account for the beneficiary, and then we report the death and do a date of death valuation. So then when it transfers over, it's going to be that new cost basis for the beneficiaries.
That's awesome. Now,
So
does
that
that happen naturally or does that happen?
we have to request it, and then let's say somebody like you said they had it at a bank and they then it's at the bank and then they want to transfer it to us. We just make sure when it comes over, okay, what was the date of death of your parent? We make sure that that cost basis is updated.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, see, there's so many intricacies, and this is literally the whole idea of the mastermind is, these are the things that nobody talks about until it's time to
Right.
talk about it, you know.
Yeah.
And
Well, and like I said, there's a lot more. It's a lot more for us as financial advisors after. So yes, I help them with the paperwork. We help them get everything transferred over. But for example, let's say, it was husband and wife, husband passed. Well, we have in our death task that we do workflow, we have it set for that first Valentine's, we send them flowers.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because 9 times out of 10, the spouse was doing something and this is their first one without a spouse. You know what I mean? It's just these little touches to let them know they're still thought about, they're still cared about.
Oh my gosh. That
Yeah,
is so
yeah.
beautiful.
And I think it's important, as financial advisors, you have to think about these other things that are affecting their lives now within this next year.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of things coming at them, and it's just, my whole is going into this and learning about it is like, how can we make this smoother? How can we make this more, there's just so many hidden potholes, and there's so many moving parts, to it, and it just honestly, it shouldn't be so complicated if it's a 100% guarantee that
Right,
going to be leaving. And it's like there has to be through systems, through, databases. Like I think, we, as like you said, we're more open now, whereas before a lot of the past generation is like, the deed is in the drawer, the will is, hidden away. Nobody knows what, the reading of the will.
yes, yeah, that doesn't happen, I don't think, anymore these days like it did.
Yeah,
But
yeah. But it's professionals like yourself that really care about the family, that, are going above and beyond, doing things that are not always your job duties, and assisting them with the bank and the life insurance and all of these things. It truly speaks to, your passion for the industry and the process. And I mean, look, you have a death task, campaign within your company. I mean,
right.
these are the birds and the bees,
Yeah,
of
it's
life.
important, and a lot of times they just need to come in and talk. And we
Hmm.
find that sometimes, like their children might say, "Oh, well, you need to clear out the house or you need to do this." And we tell them there is no timeline. You do things when you're ready. But that first year, do not make any major decisions.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a lot. Well, Mary, you're the best. Thank you for enlightening
Carolyn?
us
Yeah,
with all of this process and helping us to understand what really happens from your perspective, and how people can work with a financial advisor. What are things, hey, if your financial advisor isn't offering these things, okay, you may want to see, people don't know what they don't know,
right.
you're working with, like I said, like nowadays there's all these like just internet based,
Mhm.
financial advisor firms and things like that, where they're removing that human component, and when you move into that, you lose, this type of support, that
Absolutely.
it's not important until you need it, you know
Right. And
and
so I find that, the younger generation, they will do more of those online investments, low cost, because they're just getting started. They don't need all of this. But as you go through, the different quarters of life,
Mhm,
things change. Your needs are different.
mhm. And when you really truly acquire wealth, that's when you need a solid plan in place.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, working with someone that can hold your hand through that process, get you connected, talk with your beneficiaries or your heirs, helping them get prepared, and being brave to have those conversations. As I bet a lot of families lean on you to kind of help guide those conversations, because it can be awkward, right? Talking
Yeah.
about money and talking about mom or dad passing away. Who wants to talk about that?
Nobody. I mean, it's inevitable, like we say, but you don't want that realization to come. So,
Right. Yeah. So thank you, Mary, for all your insights.
oh, you're welcome.
Yes, and I will have all your information below in the video, so people can get in touch with you, and I look forward to continuing a collaboration and opening up the death care industry, getting more professionals and people talking about it, so we can make it a better process.
Absolutely. Working together. I love it.
All right, Mary, thank you so much.
Okay. Bye bye.